Welcome to No Room for Phonies. Back again.
Episode 53.
Continuing to talk about shame this week of the 2 weeks. We're talking about gender and shame. So we're going to talk about a few questions. So we have 2 cocktails to try before we get to the end of December. We have to try the honeycomb, which is the vanilla beans, the vodka, honey vodka, vanilla vodka, and sugar syrup.
Okay.
And we'll have mulled wine, I'm sure, over
Yes.
Christmas. Probably Christmas Eve is usually our time for mulled wine. So anyway, and then I have to think of something to do every month for 2022. So we'll see what I come up with.
Oh, because we've done our 12 drinks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I did that for 2022. So we'll
21.
have to 2021, sorry. And the recommended podcast this time is called Ideas at Work with the @ sign. So it's conversations with scientists, thinkers, and writers who are influencing our time. The world has changed. What we once believed true will take a different perspective post-COVID-19 for sure, right?
Yeah.
So these are all kinds of different people.
Wow.
It's very interesting. So Ideas, the @ sign.
I haven't had much
Work.
time to listen lately, but I'll have to add
Try
this.
that one. It's very good.
Yeah.
And then the recommended book you will not want to read because it's a cancer story and you don't like reading cancer stories. But it's the idea of Between Two Kingdoms. It's a memoir of life interrupted by Sulika. I think her name is Jaouad. I don't know how you would say that.
Joad, maybe.
So, but it is searing, and it's called a searing, deeply moving memoir of illness and recovery that traces this young woman's journey from diagnosis to remission and ultimately a road trip of healing and self-discovery. It's just fast. It's a really, really, really good book, but it's not for everybody because it really does focus in on
On the illness.
and the illness, so, and the aspects of the illness and other people around her who are going through the illness, and not everyone is that fortunate as she is. Like it's a really,
It's heavy.
It's heavy. I listened to it on Audible, and she read it herself, so that was another aspect of it that I really, really liked. So I didn't put a question down for this month, but I think we need to be, last month the question was, who are you really? And I think that's a question of self-discovery that really helps you cope with shame and move past shame in a lot of ways. So anyway, I didn't really think of a question this time around, so I think
I can add a question.
Well, we have a lot of questions that we're asking down here, so maybe we'll
right.
just say that's our question for this. And I was going to put these questions directly on to the...
Yeah, and the description of the podcast.
Yeah, and the website, I think I'll
we can
put it on.
into the YouTube video too.
Yeah. So what makes us feel ashamed? I just want to go back over that so that we can talk about them in terms of, is it different for men and women, is it gender? And I know we can't just say men and women, but
the title of the podcast is Gender. And Shame. Yes. But we are limited to our
genders.
experiences.
Yeah, our experiences.
And however, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be open to hearing other.
Well, and I think the other thing is, if you listen to this,
we just can't speak on behalf of others.
If you listen to this and you start a conversation with someone who is, any of the
LGBTQ
things, I think a lot of their experiences of shame would be the same yet different than what we're going to. So what makes us feel ashamed? Parenting, certainly there's some gender
differences there.
Their emotions, the way we look, money and work, lack of status, being addicted to something, family relationships, marriage and intimacy, what we own or we don't own, in other words, what we have, our mental and physical health, Facebook and social media. One of the things I talked about last week was young mums who are really, I think they give each other a hard time on social media with all the fancy birthday parties and this and that. And what their kids are achieving and doing. So relationships, friendships, and what is on our calendar, mistakes and lack of a perfect image, and motherhood and fatherhood.
So we just kind of want to go through those and share.
And share some of what we feel. So how is shame different for men and women in these areas, and what perspective do men and women use to actually view shame? So, like, what? Go ahead.
Well, Brene, I'm going to have to go back to the research for Brene Brown's, because it rang very true. But the biggest lens that men would view shame through is weakness, and you can apply it to any of these other topics. So that's what I'm planning on doing as we go through it.
Yeah, that idea
men
of
being
weakness.
Weak.
And for
like
women,
a man does not want to be weak.
For women, I think it's appearance.
I think there's a
the appearance of being the best mother, the appearance of being able to handle your emotions, your appearance,
just
the way you look.
But then all of these,
money and work, the appearance of being able to handle this really big, heavy duty, amazing job and juggle everything at home and whatever. Mm-hmm. So,
and the other thing, going way back to readings we did a long time ago, the whole places where women and men trip up differently, where we stumble. For women, it's enmeshment.
Right.
And then, so that plays into all of this, because it's all about how you relate to other people and how other people relate to you. And for men, it's isolating themselves.
Right.
And feel like shutting down and shutting out people.
Because women stand on the, can be at a hockey game with their kids, or watching a hockey game, or at dance class, and there's all this status involved in, what kind of team is your kid playing for, and that's for men too.
Oh, for men, it's my kid looking weak.
Yeah, right.
Does he look like a wuss, or does she look? Is she competitive enough? Is she being trumped by the other people?
Yeah. So
it is a slightly different angle.
I just think that the perspective for women is really about that appearance of always having everything together.
Yeah.
So
do you want to go back through these, or?
Well, when you look at it from that perspective, right, of men not wanting to appear weak, and women wanting to appear that they have everything all together, then you can see how that would play it all out in the way you look, and why, if you're postpartum and you're not losing weight and you're feeling crummy, why people don't talk about that with other women. Because, and I know for myself with even like menopause, how often do women actually talk about how difficult it is to go through menopause?
Yeah, other than the superficial hot flash jokes.
Right.
The deeper level stuff.
But I mean, and that when it comes down to like your health and your mental health, particularly, like there's a lot of difficulty for us just talking about the things. Like, why does there have to be these big campaigns for Movember and everything? Because people don't want to talk about it. Because if I get that, then oh my, like what's wrong? Like,
well, and the thing about Movember for men's health, it moved beyond prostate and testicular cancer to mental health and suicide prevention, because they realized that was taking as many men as the cancers. So,
right. And for women, if I make a mistake, then I don't look like I have it all together. And then other women are going to look at me and say, look at her, she can't even handle her kids and her this and her that. So instead of going to somebody, you're going through a tough time right now, what is it that I can do to help you? Sorry.
I'll have to stop that.
It's all this judgment and unfair expectations.
Well, and then I think we should go through, because there's
Okay.
also how, if you are with a heterosexual partner, then there's the response between men and women, how your shame might trigger, like,
Right. So, in parenting, if I'm feeling like everything is falling apart and we're not on, and
the
then,
first thing that I'm going to feel is like, what am I not providing? Because for men, for parenting, it's, am I the top of the pile is, am I providing for my kids financially, materially?
yeah.
That's the first thing. Because,
Well, and I mean,
'cause
remember,
if you're not providing for your family, you're shamed by society.
remember when you were
Stay-at-home dad.
stay-at-home dad, and the way my father felt was that what was wrong with you? You weren't a provider.
I wasn't a real man.
And your mom felt that way too.
Yes.
So I mean, and some of it is generational, but I still think there's something.
Well, but I had a lot of men in my own generation that couldn't talk to me. They didn't know what to talk about as soon as I said what I was doing. Then it was like, oh, what do I talk about? Because I can't talk about work.
Yes, right. Yeah. And I mean, and then the whole emotional aspect of it, right? Like, big boys don't cry, they don't show emotion. And for women, we do cry, but then that's considered a weakness, particularly if you work in certain professions.
Right.
Like, as a principal, if I was having a really, really bad day, and there were some times when I felt teary, because we are emotional beings, right? And
But us men learn how to shut that down really quickly.
And women know that if they show it,
sometimes they can use that to their advantage.
sometimes, but I think certainly for me, I learned that in order to be respected in my job, I had to appear very unemotional about things.
But then, I mean, women aren't given a very fair deal, because the moment that you're cold and unemotional,
Yeah, then you're an ice princess.
Yeah,
no. And certainly the way we
like, I don't know really if there's any way to win with shame. I mean, in the workplace for men, it's a little different, but they're weak. Like, men that are weak leaders are mocked for being sensitive.
Yes, yes.
But the moment a man is strong in the job, then he's admired.
Yes.
But women don't.
But women can't be strong like that, because then they're bitch.
Yeah. So I mean, that is one thing truly for male privilege that has been built into society for so long that it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to shake that.
But all of these,
it deserves to be.
All of these things that make us feel ashamed are shared by men and women.
Yes, it's just different ways that
we have a different way of...
Like money and work, if... I don't know how it feels for women. For men, it's, if you're getting close to bankruptcy, or if you get a pay cut, or if you lose your job, that's a huge shame factor.
Yeah, and I think for women, there's this thing where, how much time am I going to take off with my children? Because, if you take too much time off, well, then you're not serious about your career. And then if you don't take any time off, or then you just take, like, it's just, people can't just step back and say, then that's where I think that whole idea of knowing yourself. So if you're confident in yourself and you're happy with yourself and who you are, you're prepared to make a decision, and then and you can listen to other people's perspective on it, but it doesn't have to make you feel ashamed of whatever decision you go forward with.
I also think for young people who are dating or interested in looking for partners, it's hard because there's the jokes of, the husbands giving their wives an allowance. I mean, I know that's from the 40s and 50s, but there still is that dynamic sometimes, like dating, paying equally. Some men feel like they
Well,
still
and
should be
women
paying.
and women are told now, a lot of women are told now, get your own bank account, keep your own money,
Yeah.
like don't
share
don't
ever.
share. Like I was told that when I got married that you shouldn't ever like hand over any money to, and yet we share our finances
Yeah, we do.
and figure things out, and I would be uncomfortable with that. But am I like, I don't think I have I don't feel ashamed of doing that because I know that that's what's right for me.
Yes.
And I think that's where the depths of shame.
Right, because some people say, well, that you're not independent enough, you're not feminist enough if you have a joint bank account.
So if
and so
you
then
are
they shame
able,
you the other way.
And so if you are able to be, vulnerable and yet confident in yourself and what you're doing, that's, and then when would you have the nerve, I guess, would be the question, if somebody said to you, oh, well, did you see my kids, fantastic birthday party on Facebook and all the gifts they got and everything? And could you just go, yeah, that was great, and not feel that, oh man, I didn't do that for my kid?
Yeah.
Like, just, I really, like, we tried to tell our kids, just because everybody else is doing something, you don't need to, and you don't need to feel badly because we do things differently. We never took our kids to Disney.
No.
So should I be ashamed about that?
No.
It wasn't something that we chose to afford.
But we never did feel shame about that.
No, we didn't.
I never did.
No.
But
no. And our kids don't really care, I don't think.
I know.
So
but
it's
I'm also,
just,
then there's the whole, like, for men, again, with money, when you're a young man and single, then there's the whole pressure that girls will only date you if you show that you have money and that you have a cool car. And I mean, these are immature young women who are also admiring this aspect of men, but it just feeds into that I better be a provider.
And there's a lot of shame in mental health. And I mean, I really admire people who speak out about their mental health without wearing it like a badge of honor.
Badge of honor, yeah.
Like, I mean, I think that that's somewhat some of the issues with working through some stuff, is that I don't know how I feel about it when they share it on Facebook, because I still am of the opinion that you need to have some very,
it's choose who you share things with carefully.
Yeah.
It's who is worthy. What is that statement? Who is worthy of hearing your shame? If
you can put yourself out there and it doesn't bother you, and you're okay with people who say nasty things as comments and do all that stuff, if you're okay with all that, if you can manage that, and if it doesn't make you feel upset or ashamed or whatever, then all the more power to you, I guess. But it wouldn't. So I think all these things that, I think the important thing for us to kind of put out there is that there are still differences. There are still gender differences in the way shame plays itself out for men and for women. And then add that on if you are, in a gender that you don't identify with, is your gender. And now pile on the shame on top of that, and now you've got people that are just having such a hard time coping because
it's just 100% shame on every angle.
Like,
and the thing is, there again, now we have, in some cases, artificial social constructs of what a gender is. So, which, I fought all my whole life being artistic, is for some reason having an artistic interest and being artistic is a feminine side to you.
Well, and the crocheting, the sewing,
and the
all
knitting.
that stuff all becomes...
But those are all external behaviors that in the current century and the last 200 years have been mostly done by women, but 700 years ago they were mostly done by men. So, but because now if society thinks those are womanly, feminine things, and like singing and musical theater and ballet dancing and hairstyling, like why do those things have to be feminine? That whole part. And so there's shame for boys who want to do those things, and they might still be boys who want to do those things, but still think that they will love girls. And
there's a whole bunch of behaviors. And then there's
girls that were like the tom girl. I never like the sissy insult. That's like, okay, you might be gay, but the tomboy, that's kind of like, wow, that's good for you. You're going to be a tough woman. So it was like...
Well, and we still...
There wasn't an over...
We don't let children just be kids, right?
No.
Like, I remember being in, school and seeing kindergarten kids come in, and there was a little boy who dressed up in a tutu, like, every day. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, we better... he's probably... Why? Like, why does that mean that you have to now think that child...
is already choosing his identity.
Yeah. I just, and so a little girl is interested in playing with trucks, or a little boy wants an easy bake. That's a thing that doesn't exist, I guess, anymore. But I just, I think I just can't believe that we can't get past that in society where we just think, and here's the fine example. So what if you wanted to wear nail polish and you're a man?
Mm-hmm. And you are still sexually attracted to women.
Yeah.
Well, but there's shame around that.
Oh my goodness, you couldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, there are men who do it.
Yes.
And then, what confuses me is some men who want to do it, then they have to say, well, I'm bisexual, so that's why I can do it. But why do we have to be shamed into even having a label?
So those kinds of gender-specific behaviors that have been laid on us by society actually cause physical, emotional, and spiritual manifestations of shame.
And I think that for genders, that is the same. I think our physical, emotional...
Yeah, I do too.
I don't think there's a big difference.
Our manifestations of shame are the same.
No, I think from person to person it varies. Like, for me, it's mostly my stomach. Mm-hmm. But for some people, it's their backs like shame causes the physical pressure of
the ache, the
aches, or their back stiffens, all their muscles tighten up. Headaches for some people.
All those.
So that I don't think is gender specific. That's just person specific. But the other, like emotional and spiritual manifestations, would be the same
for men and women. Yeah, and I think for women. Shame can just be women who feel shame a lot I think people who feel shame a lot either go one of both ways. They're either very loud, right? Because I'm fine, look at me, I'm not ashamed of anything.
Right. They go the
meanwhile,
anger or the boisterous. Yeah.
Thou dost protest too much almost, right? And then there's the withdrawn whatever. I mean, I know when I went through a few years ago that issue with work, I felt ashamed of what had happened to me, and I did not want to see people. So I hid because I felt ashamed. And I mean, it just took me a while. And there's nothing wrong with, when you experience a trauma, there's no reason why you have to feel ashamed. But you can just take a moment for yourself and figure things out. Like, you don't have to just say, oh, well, I'm fine. I'm good.
Well, and I think that part of trauma is grief.
Right.
And then I think this is where it's gendered. It's different again. Women are allowed to grieve and be emotional more than men. Right. And men, it's like, buck up and get over it. With women, it's like, for a while, you have a lot more grace granted to you.
Yes, absolutely.
But then at some point, I think then some women will just say about the one who's grieving, okay, I'm tired of listening to you now.
Yeah.
And they don't say buck up.
No.
It's more it's again that enmeshment. They withdraw from the relationship, and then you feel even more abandoned in your grief.
Well, and the thing is, women can be very like to each other too, right?
You have to say the word catty.
Catty, right? Like, because, it's kind of like, well, I've got stuff going on too, whereas you can't compare trauma, you can't compare how somebody else feels their guilt. Like, you can't.
No, you can't.
You can't. And I mean, spiritually, I think people, when your spirit, your spirit closes in when you're feeling shame. So then you're not even feeling, and I don't mean God in the way that,
I know what you're saying.
Religion, but I'm just saying like body, mind, spirit, your beliefs, your values, your core.
It all gets shaken up.
It's shaken. So if you're not firm about what your values and beliefs and identity is, shame can just debilitate you. Right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think when one of the things that can really weaken or destroy shame is just the idea of having that person that you can speak your shame to and just say, that really made me feel ashamed, and let that.
And that person can say, I know exactly how you feel, or I can see why that would make you feel
yes.
shame.
They don't have to say.
The interesting thing, though, as spouses, is you don't understand sometimes why I'm ashamed of something, and it wouldn't make you feel ashamed.
No.
And I'm the same towards you.
Right.
It's like, well, what's that to be ashamed about?
But it's true. Do you think that that's gender, or it's just
maybe
difference
just
in personalities to some degree? But yeah. But I mean, it really takes a lot of spiritual, emotional, physical energy to move past shame and to allow yourself to go, okay, I am enough. So even though all that stuff happened to me, that really does not impact who I am. And when we were listening to that thing the other day, I think, we were kind of whatever, but I am.
Oh,
right?
where you use the statement I am, and after the I am, you put in an adjective, you don't put in a thing.
Like, you don't say, I am a mother, I am a father, I am a teacher, I am
honest.
I am honest, I am a helper. That's the part. Right. But I mean,
I am
and this
kind,
goes back to
whatever.
Labels, right? When you're tied in too much with that label, then something really bad happens and you're ashamed, and now you're stuck because you were the label.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to kind of figure out your identity, your values, your purpose, and then you aren't as shaken. It's like, because a label is pretty much like standing on a sandhill. Because if, you're the coordinator of EAP right now, but he could call you up tomorrow and say, well, I'm sorry, but we're giving that to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like...
Yeah, so you can't wrap yourself
yourself
label,
up so you can't wrap yourself in even parenting.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about parenting is, I mean, I knew that intensity of parenting would end when they were little and then got to teenagers, and then we did the teenage thing, and then you think, okay, they're going to launch. So the intensity lessens, I guess, once they're young adults and things like that. But the energy levels are different. I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought.
No, but I mean, I just think like if I am a mother is your thing.
Oh yeah, and then the thing, yeah, exactly.
Then the mother, yes, you're always a mother, and your kids always need you to some degree. But
are you thinking more about like some women who like, okay, it's been 5 years, they've had a baby, and then they want another one?
Well, there's some of that, and I also think it's just the idea that that's how you become enmeshed with your kids' lives.
Yes.
And
oh, right, with young adults, and then you just
okay, we get
think,
together every Sunday for dinner.
Yes.
And if we don't get together, then
we're
I
not
can't
an
tell
intact
my
family.
friend. Like, your mother was like 100% that.
Yeah.
The only reason
So
she
much
wanted
shame.
us for dinner was so that she could be able to tell the other people at church that we came for dinner. That was
this
it.
was before Facebook, but it was like what you say in the church lobby.
Yeah, because her friends, what are you doing today? Well, the children are coming for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
because a lot of those families were able to say those kinds of things. So
right?
that was
There was a lot of shame and pressure on people, and it was
devastating.
Devastating. So I think seeking out mentoring, and I'm going to say from my perspective I had a conversation with a friend of mine not too long ago about signing up her kid from some program, and I think she actually thought that I was going to not think that she shouldn't, because she's a stay-at-home mom, that her kid can't go for a couple mornings a week to meet other kids. And like, I just try to always be have a really open perspective on where people are at and what's important, and that I would never put myself in a position where a young mom would say something to me and I would make them feel ashamed of doing something.
Yeah.
And I mean, I truly believe that it is the greatest thing for this kid to do what he's doing. And even if I didn't, I think that's one of the things that we're going to talk about as we get into the next episode. Or what are the kinds of things that we actually say that are shaming for people?
Well, I was shamed because I wanted to be involved with my kids and didn't want to do things with my guy friends. Like, you don't want to hang out.
You can't get out.
Your wife
the
is
apron
like
strings. You're tied to the apron strings.
Oh, you've got to ask Pam permission, eh?
Yeah,
like that's all shaming.
That is all shaming, and
comments.
the kinds of things that we do. And I just feel like it is our job. I posted today about, I hope that in my toolkit I have tolerance, acceptance, understanding, patience. Like, those are the kinds of things that, and instead of making some kind of judgment on something, can you tell me why you think you would like to do that? I mean, that's what a mentor does. Yeah. They say, so what's your train of thought? What was your decision-making process in deciding to do that? If you really can't see their perspective. The other thing
that I've learned from a lot of this reading and thinking and talking about it is I have been a person who shamed others in the past.
Right.
And even now, the fact that I know this doesn't mean I'm not going to do it again.
Right. And I think the other thing is, instead of making some kind of statement of agree or disagree, you can just say to somebody, I'm really going to support you in this decision because I can see that it was a really hard decision for you. And so I'm going to support you in moving forward. And if, for example, it doesn't work out the way you think it's going to do, I'm still going to support you when you come to me and say, wow, that was a stupid decision. Why did I ever do that?
Yeah. And not,
because what
and
are
not
we?
Address and not feed the shame that they're feeling.
Why? Yeah, and then I say, yeah, you want me to tell you about the times when I was so sure something was the right thing to do and I did it, and then I went, maybe that wasn't the best idea. Like, this is the environment that I worked in, and I'm not trying to be. I don't want to even talk about them in terms of like naming and shaming them either, but the environment was, we make mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. But as soon as you made a mistake, you were like nailed to the wall because you made a mistake. So mistakes aren't for growing. Like, even if you really made a horrible mistake, can't you just sit down with somebody and say, we need to work through this? Well, and
wouldn't you like that chance?
You may even be disciplined in your job because of it. But that's okay. Like, I still would say to people, even if I said, I have to put a letter in your file about this, But so now what are we going to, instead of being angry, what are we going to do to make sure this never happens again? What kind of support do you need to move forward and not get yourself into this situation again?
Yeah.
And guess what? You're not the only one in the whole world that ever has.
No. Well, that happened to me when I was teaching at that high school. I totally forgot a class that I had scheduled. I don't know why. It was a new semester, and I didn't go to the classroom, and the kids were getting wild, and nobody was supervising them. And then it dawned on me half an hour into the 70 minutes, so I ran down and, calmed the class down, did the class. But the first thing I did before the students had a chance even to go talk to another teacher, I walked right to the principal's office and said, this is what I did. And, I was expecting that, not discipline, but definitely anger or whatever. And the principal said, oh, welcome to the club. So many teachers have done the same thing.
Yeah.
He goes, but you got them in control, right? I said, yes. And I said, but what would have happened if somebody had gotten hurt? And he goes, well, that would have been a more serious problem. But it didn't.
Well, and I mean, in my
and he goes,
case...
and what are we, and he did say, what can I do to help you? And I said, well, it was just absent-mindedness, whatever.
Right.
And, I don't think it's going to be a pattern.
Well, and that's the difference, right? If you're, and that was always my thing. If you forget a class every week or every day,
or lunch duty,
recess or never go out anytime, like there's but it doesn't have to be. And sometimes it is like, if the other person won't, that's the discussion I want to have at some point. If the other person won't just go, oh, shoot, I made a mistake, then you're put in this position where you're almost like, do I have to shame you into realizing that you've blown it? Like, how do you, and...
Right, because
you have to...
All of us, when we have shame, some of the defense mechanisms is denial.
Right. Or to blame somebody else. Or this
anger,
job is too hard.
The anger, or the copping out, whatever. So,
or going after the person who's trying to actually keep things running
the person who's
smoothly.
making you feel shame doesn't necessarily want to make you feel shame. They just want things to change and improve.
Right. Like, for a week now, you have been late for your classes every day, and the kids are wild.
That's just an observation.
That's you can't, this can't continue. So what are we going to do about it? And I've had teachers get really angry about being called on the carpet for that. Like, well, don't you realize I've got stuff like at home and I can't get here? Well,
then you have to change jobs.
Well, then you have to come up with a plan where you can get to work on time.
Yeah.
Like, you have to come up with a plan where you can get to work on time. Like, that's just... So I think that having someone in your life, and this is, that you can speak the shame to, that will listen, that will be... I think that can really... that is one of the things that builds resiliency to shame, is to being able to name it and, be vulnerable, but not with... I wouldn't do it on Facebook, but some people do.
Yep.
So how do we play a role in working within society to change the way women and men are portrayed and shamed? I think it's still... Well, and it's not just like, women and men. It's like all this gender, there's a lot of LGBTQ plus... And none of those people should be being shamed for who they are. And every single one of them should have someone that they can speak their... Or else what happens is it manifests itself for them in physical, physical, emotional, and spiritual
and then
issues.
It can spiral down into mental health that's more chronic or... more serious.
And why is anxiety so rampant in our society? And I had this conversation with a friend of ours the other day, and I said, and her feeling is that it's anxiety and negativity causes anxiety. So if you're feeling negative about yourself and who you are and everything you do, and it's all about I'm afraid, I'm ashamed, and fear and shame are neighbors.
Yes, absolutely.
So if I do this and then it doesn't work out, then I'm gonna be, so I just won't do it. And
well, I think the advice from the bully and the bystander plays out here too, because if we are a bystander to a shaming experience, I think we need to speak up and intervene on behalf of the person who's being
absolutely
shamed.
Or ourselves, if someone, we really feel like something, we're trying to share something just for with someone that we trust, just for understanding, and they come back with a, what, you're going to do that? Do you really mean to make me feel ashamed of what I'm saying? Because I'm really actually trying to make a strong, good decision here, and you're not listening. You're just, right? And asking questions is great. Like, there's no problem with that.
Yeah, but yes. You have to be careful, because
why are you doing that is not the question.
The tone of voice and the sarcasm in the question is another whole thing. But
wow, like, and how does this person in your life feel about that? And what can I do to help? It was interesting. We were having even a conversation with Sebastian about, workplace things. And, one of the things that you can say to somebody, and I said this all the time, is you seem to be upset. You seem to be not yourself. How can I help? Mm-hmm. And sometimes for some people it was, oh, thank God, thank you for asking that question, because I feel like I'm overwhelmed, I'm falling apart, I can't get everything done. Can you help me? And yes, I can actually. Mm-hmm. I can put something in place to help you. I can give you a half a day of a supply teacher to get caught up on some stuff. Like, there are things that I can cover your class at the end of a day if you're trying to rush out for appointments and things aren't working. Like, there are things that we can do to help each other. And I think if that's where your identity, your purpose, and your core values come in. Because if your core value, one of your core values is compassion and understanding.
I think the other thing is the systemic aspect of it. So there's religion and church systemic rules. There's workplace. There's unions.
Yeah.
So there's systemic. This is the way we operate by shaming. And if you're in a workplace where the unions are strong and the mediocre workers shame you into also being mediocre because you're working too hard and you're making us look bad and that type of thing. But then there's the opposite where there might be no union present, or there is one but they're weak and then management is strong and management is harassing. And then there's church rules and like all of that. I think we need to look at our systemic problems,
and I do think
in cultural systemic issues.
And I do think that speaking up against the parts of society that are like sometimes the negative voices are really loud. Yeah. And the positive voices go, oh, never mind, I'm not gonna say anything because I don't want to get into it with that crazy person. Yeah. And so then it perpetuates, and we are in a society of anxiety-ridden negative, like there's a lot of it. Yeah.
Which just leads everybody to be living on the edge.
So then how do we help people be strong, I guess? Because strength comes from within.
Yeah, but some people just don't have anywhere to draw from anymore.
Yeah, I just feel like we have to teach kids to have some resilience. Yeah. And
I think that the doting, spoiling helicopter parent of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s have done their children a disservice because they haven't given their kids.
Well, and I am a firm believer in self-regulation.
I think self-regulation
and shame also go hand in hand, because if you're able to self-regulate and take a step back and, look at situations and critical thinking, actual real
I just
critical
love that
thinking.
that mom and little child that we know, where if the child starts getting like agitated, it's like, okay, let's take some belly breaths, and like already they're being taught mindfulness, being awareness of themselves, having strategies to cope.
Yes.
And
to actually say, I feel frustrated, I feel this, and right now I don't want to do this. And sometimes, you as a parent, you can choose your battle. Sometimes they don't have to do that. Like, it's fine. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to, there are some things that you don't have to do.
Right.
But there are other things that you do have to do. But you also, and, we go through this you can also, it doesn't have to be done this second. You can have a moment to, okay, I know, I gotta go do it.
And build the strength, come up with some strategies for the first stage, to get through the first stage of whatever it is.
I guess the definition of strength is having strategies to work through things inside yourself that are like regulated and automatic. So if you're a strong person, you always can see or find a way out.
Yeah. But for those that are totally immersed in fear and shame and feel right at the bottom of the well, the first thing to find inner strength is just to find one person you trust. And I've heard of it. It might be on Facebook with a stranger that connects, and there's conversations and people walk. But anyway, you need to find somebody who can empathize and just for that one, and listen for the 1 hour.
But you also have to, I think, we've talked about this. You can't help someone who doesn't want to change and doesn't want to. If you just want to be your wallowy, sad, horrific self, then that's what you're going to be. Yeah. So, like, there's all that aspect of it too. But I honestly believe that the definition of strength is having strategies to work through. And I believe that strength and faith go hand in hand, because faith to me is not like a belief in some religious deity or something. It is actually belief that no matter what comes your way, no matter what you are faced with, you have it within you to make it, to deal with it. Not that you're not going to have hard days, and not that you're going to have to fight shame, anger, emotional, which is just exactly what, this little guy that we're thinking of. It's not that you're not going to feel all these things, because they're just part of life. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be angry. You're going to be happy. You're going to be terrified, whatever it is you're going to be. But you've got strategies to live your best, be the best version of yourself for the most part. Yeah. Well, that's kind of an interesting conversation. So we're going to...
we slid a little way from gender,
but that's okay. To be honest, a lot of it is placed on us by society, these gender, like television and all these kinds of things do a lot of...
and
damage.
And business. And because businesses play up on people's fears and people's desire for status. So they'll find something and they'll pump it up as very masculine. And then, all the guys are like, okay, you get that truck and look like that Marlboro cowboy.
I'm going to go back to having knowing yourself, a clear identity, values, core beliefs, and a purpose. And then you're not as vulnerable to all this stuff. And when you do feel shame, you can recognize it because it doesn't fit with who you are. So next time, December 15th, we're going to talk about shame and parenting.
Awesome.
And then at the end of the month, we're actually going to talk about, we have never talked about this before, but we're going to talk about life in 2022 in a kind of semi-post-COVID world.
All right.
and how to kind of move forward, and what are the things that mentally...
Not resolutions.
Not resolutions, but like, how do you navigate all this? Because there's so much to it. There's the unvaccinated, the vaccinated, the, you know, the going out in public, the being in a big crowd, the science, so I felt it would be good to sort of end the year with kind of these are some of the things you can do to feel sane in a post-COVID world.
That sounds like a good topic.
Good. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for a discussion about gender and shame.
On No Room for Phonies.
And we always appreciate you coming around to be part of our episodes. So again, this is episode 53, No Room for Phonies, Shame and Gender.